All right, hey guys. So today, Tuesday, October 27th, we are going to make sure. All right, define the slope and y-intercept of an equation in slope-intercept form. All right, so to start this off, we're going to talk about slope-intercept form. And your big thing is, probably the biggest thing for today is to, one, remember this linear function, the slope-intercept form of a line. And then we're going to talk about what the m is, which is slope, and the b is, which is going to be your y-intercept. All right, so you can see down here on the graph. I like to start with the y-intercept because I feel like it's a lot more easy. It's a dead giveaway. So you can see, where does this line, let me highlight. Where does this line right here cross, right? And this is going to be our y-axis. So where does this line cross the y-axis? And it does so right here. Oh, that's not going to work. It does so right there where y equals 1. Right? So that's going to be our y-intercept. All right. From there, we need to figure out our slope. And you are going to learn slope by using rise over run. So think back to the elevator concept, right? Remember, the elevator is going to go up and down. That's going to be your rise. That's going to be your y values. And then your run, think of running on the ground, which is going to be left to right. And those are going to be your x values. All right, and the way that's going to work is, in essence, it's going to be the change of y over the change of x. All right, so the best way I think to do this is make sure that you've got this formula imprinted in your brain. Make sure that you know that m equals slope. Make sure you know that b equals your y-intercept. All right, so let's just jump into a problem. So it asks us for the slope, and it asks us for the y-intercept. All right, so if we want to line up our slope-intercept form, we have y equals mx plus b. Now we know that our slope is equal to m, and we know that our y-intercept is going to be equal to b. All right, so all we have to do is kind of look, you just want to match it up. We're going to box them in. So we're going to have our m here, which is going to align right here with our -5. And then we're going to have our b here, which I'm going to go ahead and make sure I get this plus sign in there. And that's going to be our slope. Sorry, that's going to be our y-intercept. Our slope, right here in red, lines up with the m, because slope equals m, is just going to be -5. For our y-intercept is b, right here lines up with b, is going to be a positive 8. Or you can just write 8. All right, so when you're doing these, you're just going to continue to see this. You're going to see a lot of patterns, right? Like you're going to see that your m's line up, that your b's line up. Remember, you want to always keep the sign with it. A big thing here is bringing this negative with your slope, bringing this positive with your y-intercept. All right, so another one, again, just to show you, we will line up our y equals mx plus b. We also know that m equals slope, and we know that b is going to equal our y-intercept. All right, so here we need to solve, or we need to recognize, we need to figure out what is our slope, what is our y-intercept. Oh, and then we also want to figure out what type of slope is this. Was this in the last question? It was. What type of slope is this? We'll come back to this one after we finish example 2. All right, so I'm going to box in my slope. So I'm going to match it up with my m. and there I have my slope. I'm going to box in my y-intercept. Again, remember, I'm bringing that sign with me. All right, so my y-intercept is just going to be -2. And my slope right away is just going to be 3/4, positive. Because there was no negative, and a positive is implied when there's no negative. And that's it. So you just have to be able to look at your linear equation, look at your linear function, line it up with your, I guess, like your outline for a linear function, your y equals mx plus b, and then just match your m and your b together, and you'll be able to solve for your slope and your intercept. So something to point out, I know that we watched a video, was it Slope Dude or something like that? So we have to remember that we have our Slope Dude video, and that was the guy skiing, right? So we have this line going here, and we have our slope guy starting right here. Well, if he's going uphill, your slope is positive. If he's going downhill, your slope is negative. If he's going just horizontal, your slope is 0. And if he's going down, your slope is undefined. Undefined. That's when your slope is going down. And we'll get more into undefined, zero slopes, positive and negative, as we go through this lesson and this week. So we can see that our slope here, that this slope is in fact positive. All right, so we have a positive slope. And since I missed the earlier one, remember again, just to do Slope Dude, if we're going uphill, it's positive. If we're going downhill, it's negative. If we're going horizontal, it's 0. And if we're going down, it's undefined. So something important to point out here is that I feel like I've said this a lot this semester, but we're always reading left to right. We're always reading math left to right. So if you're reading it this way, you would say, oh, we're going uphill, and that would be wrong. You do not want to read right to left. It's just like reading a book. We're reading left to right. All right, so we're starting here, going this way. We see that we're going up. That's going to be a positive slope. All right, so what is the slope and intercept? What is the slope and y-intercept? What type of slope is it? All right, so here they don't give us our slope-intercept form. They don't give us our y equals mx plus b. But there's a bunch of stuff that I can tell right away. So we know that our slope is going to be m, and we know that our y-intercept is going to be b. All right, so I said it earlier that b, or looking for the y-intercept is always going to be so much easier. So I'm going to highlight our y-axis. Right, so where does this line cross the y-axis? Where does that line cross the y-axis? Right, and it crosses it right here where y equals 5. And we know that this point, if we were doing it as a coordinate pair, would be x is 0 and y would be 5, right? Because we have x and y. Right, so this would be one where y equals 5. So our y-intercept is just going to be 5. So now we have to go look for our slope. All right, so this isn't going to take a ton of effort, but it is going to take a little bit of math. So we want to remember our rise over run. All right, so we want to go, we're starting at this point. We're starting right where y equals 5 because we've already established this point. We want to go to another point. So just to get you guys in the habit, since we're already reading from left to right to figure out what type of slope it is, I'm going to go to my next point to the right. I'm going to start here and keep moving this way. Moving to the right. So I'm going to do my rise first. So I'm going to remember it's up and down first. This is my first. And then it's left and right. And that'll be second. All right, so I'm going to go down. I go down 1, 2. All right, and you can kind of see where I am on the same line as the next point, right? So I will have gone down 2. Well, if I'm going down, that's going to be negative. And I went down 2. All right, now I'm going to the right. So I went down 1, 2, and now I'm going to the right 1, and I hit my next point. So if I'm going to the right, that's positive. All right, so from here, you just have to simplify. And most of them will be pretty easy. But negative 2 over 1, we know is just going to be, see, we have negative 2 over 1. We know that anything divided by 1 is just itself. So our slope is going to be negative 2. Right, try and keep that consistent for you guys. All right, so we figured out our slope and our y-intercept. Now we need to figure out what type of slope it is. All right, I can use pretty much any part of this line to figure this out. So I'm going to start down here. Remember, we are reading from left to right. And you can see that when I'm coming left to right and I hit right here on the graph, if I'm slope dude and I'm skiing downhill. Right? And we remember this. If you're going uphill, it's positive. If you're going downhill, it's negative. If you're going horizontal, it's 0. And if you're going vertical, it is undefined. So we can tell that this is a negative slope. All right? So memorizing this will help you a lot on the test and the exit tickets. All right, so let's do another one. So I'm going to start off with finding my y-axis, which is going to be, that was a terrible line. Thank you, computer, for the help. All right, so I need to look for my slope, and I need to look for my y-intercept. Remember, m equals slope, b is your y-intercept, and that comes from our linear function y equals mx plus b. All right, so to start, I want to see where my line crosses my y-axis. And here you can see that that happens right where y equals 3. Remember, this point is x is 0 and y is 3. Let's not forget what our coordinate pairs are. All right, so our y-intercept is just going to be 3. So now we need to figure out our slope. Well, I'm going to start from this point because we already have established this point. We know that it is on the graph. We know that it's on the line. We also know that it's the y-intercept. So let's stick with this point. So we're going to come down 1, 2, 3. And you can see that we're on the same line of the graph that we need to be on to start moving to the right. All right, so we came down. Let me do it over here. Remember, it's going to be rise over run. And I'll kind of leave some of the other notes off because you guys can always rewind. So we came down, so that's going to make it negative, and we came down 1, 2, and 3. So it'll give us 3 there. Well, now we still need to get to this point over here. That's our goal, right? So we go 1, 2 to the right. Well, 2 to the right is going to be positive, right? And we're sitting on this point now. So our slope is going to be negative 3 over 2. Well, there's really nothing you can do to simplify here. Remember, on the previous one, it was simplify. Well, here it's about as simplified as you're going to get it. So your slope would just be negative 3 over 2. All right, now we're going to talk about slope dude again, right? So I'm reading this graph left to right. Coming from the left, I hit the graph. You can see now I'm going downhill, right? So that means that our slope guy is going downhill. And if it is downhill, then we know that this is going to be a negative slope. And if you have any questions or comments about that, I would suggest going to the previous slide. and looking at our example for slope dude. Or check the video out on Schoology, I think. Did I post it? If I haven't, I will. It'll be up there. All right, so we've done this using our slope intercept form of the linear function. And now we've done it just by using a graph. We're going to finish this off by using a table. All right, and remember, when you're looking at a table, it doesn't matter if the table goes this way or if the table is up and down, right? You want to focus on your x values and your y values. So just to kind of keep this together, these are your x's, these are your y's, and we're going to work with them from here. All right, so to keep with what we've been doing, I want to look for my y-intercept, right? So I'm looking for my slope. Sorry, let me write this down. Slope, then I'm looking for my y-intercept. Well, I want to look for my y-intercept first. Okay, so you saw over here in the previous slide where I wrote out where your x is 0, right? Where x is 0, that's where your y-intercept is. That's because you're sitting on the y-axis right here. And then you're coming up to your y-intercept. So just like that, what you want to look for is, where is my x 0? All right, my x, wherever my x is 0, this guy is going to be your y-intercept, right? Because this table, I'm sorry, means the same as this coordinate pair. And that is very similar to what I wrote up here: 0, 3, 0, -6, x, y. So our y-intercept, since we haven't seen this in a while, b equals y-intercept is going to be -6. All right. Now we have to think a little bit more about this rise over run. So remember, we're looking for slope, which is rise over run. Okay, so if I go from 0 to 3, how do I put this? Well, let's look at it like on a number line, right? So if I'm going from 0 to 1, 2, 3, I'm going 1, 2, 3. I'm making 3 moves. Sorry, rise over run. Remember, we do the y first. That's my fault. All right, so let's look at this on a number line. This is your y value. So I have a -6, -5, -4, just for fun, a -3. Well, I'm starting here, but I want to get to -4. So I'm going 1, 2. So my rise is going to be 2, but I know I'm going to the right, so that's going to make it positive, right? Because we're looking at a number line. All right, so if I wanted to do run, again, I would have a number line. You could have, we're going to start at 0 with 1, 2, 3, and then just because we can, we'll go to 4. So we have 0, and we want to get to 3. All right, so we're going to go 1, 2, 3. So it's going to be 3, and we're going to the right, which means it's going to be positive. So our slope will just be a positive 2/3. All right, now for this, we don't have a graph to look at when it talks to what type of slope is this. But we know that the slope is positive, and we know that, right, because there's no negative sign here. So this is just going to be a positive slope. Right, when they ask you questions about, is it negative, positive, 0, undefined, those should be pretty easy questions for you. All right, if you didn't like using a number line there for the slope, here's another way to do this. So we will do our slope equals and our y-intercept b equals. So let's look for y-intercept first. Right away, we're looking for where x is 0. Well, x is 0. So that means that our y-intercept is going to be -6. And remember, that's because our coordinate pair is x, 0, y, -6. So when you're looking on a graph, your point's here, and you're coming down 1, 2, 3, all the way down to -6. and that's where your line will cross. All right, for the slope. Let's just look at the difference between these numbers, right? So from -1 to 0, we had to add what? What do we have to add to get from -1 to 0? We had to add 1. And you can check this with each, I don't want to say pair, but each number going to the right. So what do we have to get? What do we have to do to get from 0 to 1? We have to add 1, right? We have to add 1. What do we have to do to get from 1 to 2? We have to add 1. 2 to 3, we have to add 1. Okay? And then our y value. What do we have to do to get from -8 to -6? We have to add 2. -6 to -4, we have to add 2. -4 to -2, we have to add 2. -2 to 0, we have to add 2. Okay, and then this will be the same. All of these right here will be the same, and all of these with your y's will be the same. Right? If for some reason these numbers are not the same, either you've made a simple mistake or it's a bad graph or a table, I guess, at that point, but usually it's just a small mistake. All right, so we want to remember that it's rise over run, which is going to be our change in y over our change in x. So we're going to do our y first. Remember, y first, then our x. So y is going to be a +2, x, change in x is a +1, and then we simplify. And you'll see that you have 2 over 1. Anything divided by 1 is just going to be itself. So 2, our slope is going to be a +2. When it asks what type of slope it is, we know that it's a positive slope. All right, so I hope that was helpful. We have a test coming up next week. End of the quarter is coming soon. So make sure you guys are getting your assignments done and math space and play posits and all of that. And I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Thank you.